What's up, guys? In this video, episode number 2, you're going to see a full leak down test. I obviously have a lot of other stuff going on, trying to get these videos out as soon as possible, but editing is not fun. So everybody wants to be a YouTuber till it's time to edit, so I'm trying to get through that. But just a little preview, we have got the GTS tail lights installed, so there's a video coming up on that, as well as the GTS tail lights. We also have the 6WB, so I have a quick install video on that. It is awesome, love it. Love the tail lights. We also have some other goodies that we're going to be installing as well. Episode 3 should be the oil pan and all the S55 oil bits and pieces. That was a lot more work than I thought. But for now, we're gonna go in chronological order and get going on the leak down test. So enjoy. All right, the moment of truth has come. I'm going to be checking the motor for any issues via leak down test. And as you guys can see, I have no turbo. I got my Pure Stage 2 over there on the workbench that I'll be installing here. As soon as I can confirm the motor is good. If the motor's not good, then I will be tearing this thing out and starting to put forged pieces in it, which I do not want to deal with. So I am going to be pulling my B58 coils and exposing all of my the spark plug holes so I can get the test in there, get my compressor set up. I'll do all that off camera, no need to watch that. And basically just get prepped for being able to run this test. And once I do that, we'll find top dead center on cylinder 1 and proceed checking to see where we're at. So fingers crossed. If everything's good on this, I should be able to basically put the turbo in there, hook everything back up, and I'll be ready to rock and roll. I got a lot more work to do, but this thing hasn't moved for months. First, got my brand new cylinder leakage test kit. For this thing, I didn't order the most expensive, but I definitely did not order the cheapest. I got this off Amazon. It looks to be very good quality. There were a lot of reviews that said that the quality of this was similar, if not professional grade. I will probably rarely use it, so it's not like I need it to perform every day flawlessly. Because my motor's not going to be warm, obviously I have no turbo, you're supposed to do this test when the engine's at full operating temperature, and I can't do that. So what I'm looking for in this test is major failures. If I'm even close to what the parameters say I need to be for this test, then I am going to be happy, call it good, and move forward with this thing. And I actually misspoke earlier because I'm not good to go, for crying out loud. I need to do my rod bearings. That's how long it's been since I've had my mind set towards this. I've been working on this silly thing over there forever. So, so you have all the different adapter sizes. You have your hose that'll go down into the port, and this is where we get our air and pressurize and adjust the pressure into the cylinder. And so I'm excited. Let's get going. All right, so got all the coils off, and I've got cylinder 1 and 6 spark plugs out. 1 and 6 run the same. Cylinders 2 and 5 run the same, and 3 and 4 run the same. So 1 and 6 is paired to hit top dead center at the same time, but one's going to be on the compression stroke and the other one's going to be on the exhaust stroke. So if I hit TDC in one and I do the test and it just blows air, then that means that it's probably on its exhaust stroke and I need to move over to cylinder 6. This is only for the first cylinder, because after that, so like if I'm at TDC on 6, I can follow the firing order, which I'll look up here in a second, and I'll know that the very next cylinder will be TDC. Now I'm using like a nylon, this is actually a flexible nylon. It's used for fishing wires through the wall for electrical work. And here you can see that as soon as I go into that cylinder head, I'm at TDC on 1 and 6. And 22 millimeter on the crank hub. I pulled the pulley off, or the serpentine belt, to free up the motor. It's in neutral. And so that's where we stand. The only challenge I'm kind of running into here is this. This is what's going to go into my spark plug socket. And then this connects into here. The issue I'm having is, how in the world do I tighten this down to hold 100 PSI? Because that's what I'm shooting for. So I've got my tank back in there, over there. It's set underneath all that junk. And I've got that set at 110 PSI. I've got this closed. And so once I get this set in that number 6 cylinder, I'll start to allow pressure to pass through until I hit 100 PSI. And then we'll sit it there, let it sit. And then the difference between the gauges, then I close this. And then the difference between the gauges is the lost pressure. And then there's a whole other process that I hope I don't have to figure out. But if it does leak, if it bubbles up in the coolant, that's a head gasket issue, or the head's loose or something of that nature. If it goes out the intake, I pulled the charge pipe over here. That would mean that the intake valves are bad. I have no turbo, so I have no exhaust manifold, so that'll make it really easy if it's the exhaust. And then if it might also possibly, I could hear it leaking here. You're supposed to have like a stethoscope to be able to tell, but there's this chart here that tells you, okay, if I'm at 100 PSI, what are acceptable ranges, and then there's charts as far as how much you can lose. If it goes out the crankcase breather, then I've got worn cylinder walls or rings. That could also, because it might not be up to temperature. So this is kind of making it a little bit more difficult, but we'll see. So, all right. So I'm going to get this set up for cylinder number 6. Get this hooked up here and see where we're at. I'll be right back. So we're all set up for cylinder 6. I've got the gauge in there, or the leak test indicator. I am going to go to 100 PSI here, and and this is what's feeding it, and then this is what that cylinder is maintaining. So as I open this thing up, when I hit 100 PSI, on the left side, which is what's feeding it, I'm over here on this side at a 95. And so I have roughly a 5% leakage, which is stinking awesome. And I'm going to go through and check. So the first place I'm going to check is the crankcase, because that's where I expect it. This is a cold motor. And I don't know if you can hear that. But there is a little bit. Okay, I'm checking intake. Don't hear anything. I'm gonna check right here. Okay, I can feel a little bit of air coming out of here. I'm going to reach down to cylinder number 6, the exhaust port, since I conveniently have that wide open, and I feel absolutely nothing. So with the crankcase, that would be the rings or cylinder walls, which makes sense because I'm not up to temp like I should be. So I'm going to call cylinder number 6 good. So that's really good news. All right, the firing order is 153624. So I'm going to go from cylinder 6 to cylinder 2. This is going to be the next closest to top dead center on the compression stroke. Again, 2 and 5 would be the same, but if I tried it on 5, that would be the exhaust stroke. So again, this will ensure that I only have to do one full revelation of the crank hub in order to hit all 6 cylinders, because it is not fun trying to turn that ratchet down there. So I'm going to pull the plug on number 2 and go in there and hit TDC. I'm on the compression stroke on number 2, and I'm rotating this. I have a breaker bar on it, and you can see how that is moving as I rotate this. So I hit TDC, and the reason why I'm using a breaker bar and not a ratchet is because I am going to need to hold this motor in position while I put pressure on it. With all the spark plugs out, it's in neutral, there's no load on the motor, if you will. And if I put 100 PSI, it could cause the motor to turn and forward, which would mean the exhaust valve would open, and we wouldn't get an accurate reading. So rather than using a ratchet, usually when you hit TDC to do something like time your motor, there's a pin in the back, but that's TDC on the correct stroke with the piston, with the cams in the right position. But we have to hit TDC for every single cylinder. And so the only real way to hold the motor would be right here. So that's what I'm going to do as I apply pressure. So here's my problem child right here. Cylinder number 2. I can only hit about 68 PSI, so I've got 32% loss. And I can feel it's on the exhaust side. And when I reach in the port, if I feel to the left side, it's no air. If I feel to the right, it's coming from, so it's coming from the right, or the front valve, if you will. I can actually feel the air escaping on that side. And so, not sure what the next steps are. Right, I've been messing around with cylinder number 2, and as you can see, I've gotten it almost up to 80 PSI. So once I identified it was the front valve, you know, obviously this is, I hope if you're watching this video, you probably get this, but 24 valve motor, 4 valves per cylinder, 2 intake, 2 exhaust. So I've got a front exhaust and a rear exhaust valve. And because I have the turbo off, I'm able to reach in there and was able to feel that the front valve was the one leaking. So I took some brake clean and a nylon brush and got in there the best I could with the valve open to try to hit the bottom of it, obviously without scoring it or doing any damage. The other thing I did is I cranked the motor several times with no air pressure. And all this in an effort, because this motor's been sitting for a couple months, all this in an effort just to get the carbon off. Then what I did is very carefully, and I wouldn't recommend this, but necessarily, but with air pressure feeding into the cylinder, I rotated the motor clockwise because I wanted pressure as that valve closed, so that it would blow out any carbon as it sat, and that seemed to do the trick. So obviously I've got no heat. 100 psi is a lot less than what you're going to get on a true compression stroke. No fire, no burning, nothing. I believe that that valve, after this motor runs, will continue to improve. So I'm leaning towards just putting this thing back together. And then once I am able to crank it over, just doing a normal compression test on the 6 cylinders to see, after I've got it up and running, to see where we're sitting at with cylinder number 2. So good news in the sense that I can actually impact it. All right, I'm going to attempt to do a video here of the inside of cylinder 2, where I supposedly have a leak. All right, so what I'm going to be doing, because of what we did with the leak down test and the fact that I had the turbo off, I can actually scope my exhaust and see the exhaust valve. And it's I just hit it with a nylon brush, and I probably bumped into the stem, which isn't a big deal. Okay, so there you can see the valve, nice and clear. And we can watch as the motor turns over that valve and hold it still. Come up and down. We can put cylinder number 2 in TDC. So this is top dead center. So that's where it should be seating. That's what you do, the leak down in that position, and we're still getting some leakage. So I sprayed a bunch of cleaner in there, nylon brush. I'm gonna let the motor run and work itself out, but just to kind of give you an idea of what's happening internally when you get those leaks. All right, so here is cylinder 4. I've removed the fan to get better access, and I just wanted to show you how I'm hitting TDC. I'm going in firing order, so I went from 2 to 4, and I'm gonna rotate the motor clockwise until that nylon rod, I'm not using anything metal because I don't want to bother the top of the pistons, hits top, and see how it's starting to go back down. So I'm gonna go in reverse until, there it goes, it stopped. Now I'm going to take my breaker bar. I'm going to take my breaker bar here and hold the crank hub in position so that the pressure does not move it. So I get that set. Take this guy out, spin this in, and we'll get 100 psi on this guy and see where this one's at. So here is the next up, which is cylinder number 1. And that looks to be at about 93 as well. And actually that's going up to 94. So it's really hard. I have to actually like put my face in it to feel with only this much leakage. And literally I stick my nose in here and you can just barely feel the air pushing by. That's not a lot of leakage to be able to really detect, but I'm gonna call that 95. So that's great. All right, here we are in number 5. And we're gonna go ahead and see what we get on this. And we're at about 91, I'd say. to be honest, I can feel it leaking through the spark plug gap more than anywhere else. And that always makes me wonder. I'm gonna try to lubricate the threads on this connection here, because when you're tightening this down, you can literally only get it as tight as this rubber hose will twist. So if I put just a touch of NICs on that, I should be able to get it a little bit tighter. I mean, it comes with a pretty healthy gasket, but I don't think I'm completely sealing on that. So we're gonna try that again. All right, got some NICs on that. And let's see what happens. Just about 94. And I can still feel a little bit of a leak on this. So, you know, it's close enough to call it good. I guess that's all that really matters. But kind of interesting to see. I can get a couple of extra PSI with some NICs and getting that tighter. I wish they made a tool that, like a crow's foot, that was narrow and long enough to get down in there and actually tighten that on, because I can't feel anything on the exhaust. I can hear it. And yeah, putting my nose over that, I can feel a little bit of air coming out. So I'm gonna call that cylinder wall. And I'm gonna call that 94. All right, so this is gonna be the interesting one, because cylinder number 3 was the cylinder that Pure Turbo suspected had an issue. When I sent my turbo in for rebuild, they said runner number 3 on the turbo fold, exhaust manifold, had what they considered evidence of a leak, oil leak of some sort. I don't know if they were trying to justify and wanting to argue to not rebuild it under warranty. But nonetheless, this is what they threw at me, and I showed them logs of it making perfect boost with no issues. And so let's see what this one does. Yes, sir. There's 95.